And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media for Wednesday, August 4th, 2021. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith and Frank Vasner. My opening statement is this. The Pistons had themselves a draft night last week in addition to taking Cade Cunningham. The Red Wings are keeping Tyler Bertuzzi, and the Tigers almost stood pat prior to last week's trade deadline, while Miguel Cabrera chases his own history, like I said last week. Ed, you're up next, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, what is your opening statement?
My opening statement in regards to at least to the Pistons, the easy part was the draft. The easy part was the number one pick once you had won the lottery. The easy part was selecting Cade Cunningham, the pomp, the circumstance, the introduction and everything to the city. The easy part's over. Now the hard part, the work, the grind, that part truly begins.
All right. Frank, what is your opening statement?
My opening statement is also about the Pistons, and it comes after what happened when they took Cade Cunningham, drafting guys like Isaiah Livers and Luka Garza, who are going to be competing for a role on this team, not only for this season, but seasons to come. And also in free agency, bringing in Kelly Olynyk, Trey Lyles, and Cory Joseph, all of whom have something in common that we'll get to momentarily.
All right. But before we begin, this show is sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app where great fans cover. Download it from the Apple App Store or Google Play, the Viget Sports mobile app, VigIt, and sign up by using the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B in the middle as in billionaire, for Stables Media. That's the Viget Sports mobile app, VigIt, referral code STABLES with a capital S. Now, first off, the Pistons and the rest of the NBA draft. The Pistons, of course, select forward Isaiah Livers from Michigan at 42nd overall. Ed, we'll go with you first. I'll bet you're going to love this one since you're a Michigan fan, but you got to give analysis no matter what. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. What is your grade on Livers?
If I was to give a grade on this pick, I would say a solid B plus. The only reason I can't get this an A or even an A minus territory is because we got to see how Livers performs coming off of his foot injury. As you remember, that's what took him out of the tournament and ended his collegiate career with Michigan. Other than that, in terms of fit with the team, his style of play, the position that at the position that he plays and what he can bring in terms of overall scheme, plus the fact that his old college coach John Beilein is in charge of player development at the team, and if you were to ask me, I wouldn't be surprised if Coach Beilein had a hand in at least advising Troy Weaver, not just for this pick, but also the pick for Luka Garza. But we'll get to him in a moment. In terms of Isaiah Livers, his versatility for a man his size and what he brings, he can be, if you want to say on a comparable level, I'll probably say more towards Sadiq Bey. Both around play that wing at the wing spot. Livers can, I think, if you want, you can bounce it off by having him play at power forward, but mainly you can have him as a 3 in certain lineups. And not only that he can show that he can get to the rim, he has actually a solid touch, a solid shooting touch from outside. I believe he was a 40% shooter from 3-point range. Again, another common thing that we're going to see with Luka Garza coming up in a little bit. But in terms of Isaiah Livers himself, I'm of the belief in terms of if you want to say that his draft stock fell, quote unquote, probably could due to the fact that his injury did play a part. And again, that's not his fault. I believe, I'm of the belief, honestly, that if Livers had not gotten hurt, there's a good solid chance that Michigan may have won the national title this year. I know that sounds, oh, of course you would say that, but I truly believe that. Look, they got to the doorstep of the Final Four without him. There were a couple of bad offensive positions at the end of that game, from winning it without him. Imagine what they could have done and would have done with him fully healthy or at least somewhat compatible inside in that lineup. So factor all that in. I think this is a solid pickup for the team in terms of who you can put on the floor in certain lineups, whether it be with Cade or with Killian Hayes, or whatever the case may be. he can be a on-spot shooter as well as a guy who can has no problem getting in the paint and mucking it up with some of the bigs at some point. So overall, I really like this pick, and it's not just because I'm a Michigan fan. It is funny though that all these years after wondering, man, why didn't the Pistons select this guy or this guy? Now you finally get a local guy, and when you know it's because John Beeline is now a part of the team, a part of the front office staff. And I kind of made an offhanded a remark, or if you want to say it, call it such on Twitter, but I really had an honest observation, like, this must have been what would have felt like if the Pistons actually drafted Trey Burke. So knowing that and all that, the fact is what for Livers, he's basically staying home because this is as Michigan bred as you can possibly get. Born and raised in Kalamazoo, went to school in Ann Arbor. Now he's going to be playing in downtown Detroit. So happy for him, happy for the team. And I really like this pick, but I want to see how he performs shaking off the rust from that foot injury that he had. And I think his presence in the locker room, if you could tell by the introductory press conference, his presence is going to be very welcome in that locker room because there's a good majority of young players that may need a locker room voice, a locker room leader, so to speak. And I think Livers has potentially one of those guys for this team. So for that as well, I'm going to be giving this a B+, but I could see this rising into an A if he's able to shake off that injury rust and show what he's really capable of.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes rehab, other times it doesn't. Frank, what is your grade on Livers?
I'm giving this a B because more so I want to see how he can recover from said injury. I mean, kind of like what Ed said, he's someone who can score inside and also shoot as well. I think he's going to be utilized a lot in pick and roll situations. But Ed, here's a question I have for you. Do you think that once he recovers from his injury, do you think we might see him with the G League team, the Motor City Cruise? And do you think there's a possibility that he'd start down there just because they're trying to get their own culture and footprint built as well, since the G League team's now moved to Detroit?
I could see him getting some development for sure, especially him and some of the other young draftees, because when you factor in that there's still guys from last year's draft class, as well as other veterans and such that they've signed, there may not be enough room on the roster for him to get adequate playing time and enough minutes at the start. But I think once he has his development, go through that period, somewhere after, I want to say maybe after the All-Star break or so, if he has a good enough impact, I could see him getting a call up and getting maybe not as much minutes as he would have had in the G League, but still enough to show that, hey, okay, there's a roster spot ready and willing for him. It's just up to him now to step up and earn it. But I think it's not going to be a problem for him starting down with the drive. Absolutely not.
All right. So Ed gives it a B+. Frank gives it a mid-range B. I'll give it a B+ just to make it more fair and see what happens from here. Hopefully his health gets better. So moving forward, the Pistons select center Luka Garza from Iowa at 52nd overall in the 2021 NBA draft. Ed, what is your grade on Luka Garza from Iowa?
Much like Livers, I'm going to give this one a B+, but this is pushing stronger into A category, A territory for me compared to Livers because we know what Luka Garza is capable of. We've seen him do it all year for Iowa as those that watch Big Ten basketball. For goodness sakes, he was not only the conference player of the year, but also the overall Wooden Award winner for National Player of the Year. Think about that. We are living in a day and age of modern basketball where you can be a collegiate player of the year, and immediately after that you don't go into draft until late in the second round, almost a few picks away from being undrafted itself. So it speaks to how the game can change and has changed in so many ways. But also I think it is a bit of an underrating of sorts on Luka Garza because yes, he's a big man. But as Dwayne Casey himself put it, he can also surprise you. He does have a shooting touch. He can shoot from the three. I believe he was just like Livers, a 40% shooter from the 3-point line himself last year. which is for a guy who's 6'11", and at the time when he was in college, he was 6'11", 270. Now he's dropped about 30 pounds of weight, I believe, in the off season. That's saying something. And I think when you see comparisons, I thought Coach Casey had a solid, excellent comparison when he mentioned Brook Lopez. And we know how much of a contributor Brook Lopez was. May not have been all the way, but it was in certain spots that Brook Lopez held in terms of helping the Bucks win the championship this past NBA Finals just last month. So I can see him being that similar role. And let's not forget, even before that, let's go all the way back to when the Pistons won the title themselves in 2004. One key contributing factor that I think not that many people ever talk about, which I think is criminal, Mehmet Okur, who was stretch big, who can get inside, but he could surprise you by shooting lights out from three at times. And I think his presence was sorely missed, I feel, when the Pistons tried to go back to back. But tangent aside, Luka Garza, the fact that he's lost weight now, which means he could be more agile, get up the floor, up down the court much better, and showcase what he can bring from the 3-point line as well as size presence at the rim. Because my God, when you're 6'11" and you're, like I said, when you're at the size that he's at, and you also win multiple Players of the Year awards in your conference, you got to be just doing something right in terms of being a big man at the rim. So he can definitely fill that role as well. And at the start, I believe, you'd be one of those guys to where, knowing that you now traded away Mason Plumlee, that opens up that spot for not only for Isaiah Stewart to get more minutes as the starting center, but leaves open some room for some guys to get minutes as the backup center. And I believe that Garza down the road can be that full-time backup center if need be, or in certain situations or certain lineups to where it'd be second unit, or, hey, we got to give Stewart a rest, or, hey, he may mesh well working with Cade or Killian or whatever the case may be. You put out and plug him in the right spot, in the right spaces, and let the big man go to work. And I think between Garza and I'll mention with Koprivica, the Pistons need some size at the rim, because they were ranked 25th in the league in rebounds last year. That means they weren't getting enough boards. Say what you want about Andre Drummond, the guy could at least snatch you up some boards when you needed it. And they missed that presence, so to speak, at the very least. So I think him getting this and with Koprivica could help improve on that at least at a marginal amount. So for me, another B+, but I really, really, really like this pick.
All right. Yeah, and Memo Okur, another familiar name with the going to work Pistons era. That's something I could remember as well. Frank, what is your grade on Luka Garza?
Well, first, Ed, great job pulling the Mehmet Okur reference. That was somebody I almost completely forgot about as a member of the Going to Work team. But going back to Luka Garza, I'm leaning kind of in the B-, maybe B range. I mean, I've watched Garza play when he was on TV at Iowa. And, yeah, he can get buckets. Yeah, he can rebound. Here was the knock on him, though. It was his defense. And that's something that he's going to have to work on. I still believe that he can actually develop there and get better, because I believe that defense is mostly effort. As someone who's a disciple of a defensive-minded coach, he works on that, then, yeah, maybe this could get up to possibly a B+. But I'm giving this a B for now. And honestly, I think this is another person who could be playing with the Motor City Cruise to begin with, given the fact who the Pistons have brought in free agency as well. But I think if he gets an opportunity with a big club, I'm sure he'll make the most of it.
All right, fair enough. We'll give it a mid-range B then. Luka Garza. And then the Pistons select 7'1" center Balsa Koprivica. Is that how it's pronounced, Ed?
Yeah, Koprivica. You got it right. He even stated himself at the press conference that is actually how you pronounce it. So it's like you're saying pizza at the end of it, but you're saying it with a V. So Koprivica is the correct pronunciation.
Yep. Perfect rhyme, too. From Florida State via Serbia at 57th overall. Ed, what is your grade on the pizza man, Koprivica?
I'm going to give it a B- because I think I see Koprivica more as a project player compared to Livers and Garza. Both of those dudes, I believe, are more developed at this stage, at this point of their career, than Koprivica is. But again, a guy who is 6'11", 7 foot, you can do, there is a limited amount of things you can do with him. But like I mentioned before, you need reliable help and consistency with your size and down low, especially in the paint. And the Pistons were sorely lacking that last year. So, like I mentioned before, with the fact that they were in the bottom 10, even bottom 5 of teams, in terms of average rebounds per game, that says something to how they were not that presence on the glass. And I feel I'm up to believe in terms of winning basketball games and winning championships, establishing a tone and eating off the glass takes away second chance points and opportunities from the other team, for starters, and 2, can help get your team going in transitions. And I believe one of Cade Cunningham's strongest standpoint is moving in transition. So between his size and length and the length of the other guys in question, that could be a heavy emphasis in terms of not only stronger defense, but stronger rebounding as a whole in general. So again, still want to see more from him, but I like the thinking of what he did. And I know I saw some fans on Twitter who were thinking, "Oh man, are you going with this guy?" And like, "Oh, I don't know what you want to do with Garza." But again, I will remind you again, not only of what the Bucks had done with their bigs, or at least their ability to showcase a presence down low, even playing with big men. I know PJ Tucker wasn't what you call a prototypical big, but he more than held his own going up against guys like DeAndre Ayton, and before that, going up against Kevin Durant of all people. So when you have that and guys like Brook Lopez as well, and Bobby Portis, amongst others, that can take the pressure off of Giannis from terms of that inside presence at the rim, that was one reason why they were able to win the championship, because they had the size advantage over Phoenix, and they took advantage of it. Much like the year before with the Lakers, with the guys that they had, not just LeBron and Anthony Davis, but guys like JaVale McGee, guys like Dwight Howard, who can eat up at the board, but also be that force, be that presence down low in the paint, especially Dwight. And there's a reason why the Lakers just brought him back in this year's free agency, because they missed that in this year's playoffs. So I'm still of the belief, in this day and age, even though everybody wants to shoot out the gym, and it's like you see like in an RDC sketch when they're parodying J. Cole, and like, all my dudes want to shoot like Steph. Well, guess what? At some point, you got to get some people that want to put their butts on the block, get their backs to the rim, and, eat up, feast on these fools in the paint. Dominate these small children. Collect your boards. Be the big man. I can see what Shaquille O'Neal, what Shaq is talking about sometimes, of how the art of the big man is sometimes lost in today's game. Simple fundamentals of, hey, having your big guy down low, snatch the rebound, be that rim protector. It makes so much of a difference, because that can bring collapse, defensive pressure, and then you have a skill enough big man, let's say like a Nikola Jokic, for example, who can pass to anybody, or like Giannis for himself with his ability to pass. That gives you open shooters, and which can lead to high quality shots, and adds a different level and a different weapon to your team's overall offensive efficiency and production. So I'm still a believer that, like I said, you still need big men who knows how to do their role well in order to win championships. And I think the last 2 NBA champions have proven my point effectively. So again, Koprivica, project player for sure, but I like the mindset or the thinking of what Troy Weaver's doing. So I got no problem giving it a B or even a B minus.
All right, we'll give it a B minus. Frank?
I have to agree with that. I'm giving it a B minus as well. And something else that he alluded to, who I know a lot of people say that, the traditional style big man in the NBA is going the way of the Buffalo. And Ed kind of mentioned it. I'll mention it. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, you see it with Brook Lopez with the Bucks, or JaVale McGee with the Lakers the year before that. You still need a big man who's able to eat on the block, post up, get the rebounds, clean up misses, and block shots as well.
Another good example, pardon my interruption, another good example would be Tristan Thompson. You saw what valuable role he played with the Cavs, It wasn't just LeBron and Kyrie going off the way they did. Tristan Thompson getting those key offensive rebounds down low when he was pretty much the only guy on that team, even more so than Kevin Love that could do that, was crucial to that team winning that championship in 2016.
Exactly. And heck, even look at the Warriors, the years they won it. Everyone points at Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Well, they had JaVale McGee on those teams as well, and even Kevin Durant would still clean up windows as well. You still got to have a guy that's going to do those things and stick those big fundamentals.
Yeah, and some fans, Golden State fans, will even say, not even the ones besides the ones that say, "Oh, we would have won if Draymond wasn't suspended." Some will even claim that, hey, if Andrew Bogut, their rim protector, didn't go down, they could have. That was another reason why they had lost. Granted, there's other things such as LeBron and Kyrie doing what they did, as well as the Golden State offense for some reason having mind-numbingly bad turnovers in a Game 7 at home, and also the fact that you still had Draymond for Game 6 and 7. But again, I digress. That point still stands. Having a big man and having a guy who can eat up off the glass is still so crucial if you want to contend for, if not play for, and win a championship.
Yeah,
exactly.
True.
He doesn't need to be your main guy. We're not saying that. He just has to be able to go out and do his job.
Exactly. He has a role. Let him go out, do that role efficiently, and as great a job as possible, and let the others fulfill their spots, their jobs, and their roles respectively.
Yep. Let's go to work. Just like the going to work Pistons. Speaking of the Pistons, in free agency, they signed former Houston Rockets center Kelly Olynyk to a 3-year, $37 million contract. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, what is your grade on that $37 million contract for 3 years? Center.
In terms of fit for the team, I would give it a B+, but the amount of money, probably a bit too much for my own taste. But if that was the only way you were going to get him to sign here, I get it. But I'll push him more towards a B because of the amount of money. But still, with Kelly Olynyk, first he had made a name for himself with what he had done with Gonzaga. And even though he didn't quite live up to those expectations coming out of college, he's still a very solid, versatile NBA player. And like I mentioned with the evolution of today's game of how, it is maybe somewhat as too old school to think, a big man, you still need your traditional big man at the rim. Well, guess what? Kelly Olynyk can give you more than that. He's a stretch big that can shoot for threes. He can shoot. He's got a mid-range touch as well. So, and not only that, he can be also that guy with the departure of Mason Plumlee. He can also be that guy that slots into that role of backup center when Isaiah Stewart needs a minute to catch his breath. Or again, you can put him up on, since he's already proven and ready and seasoned, he can be at that role while your young draftees, guys like Garza, guys like Koprivica, or even Livers to an extent, they can grow and mature and develop on their own in both the Summer League and the G League. And by the way, quick point I want to mention before I get back to the topic. Saw some comments from Cade Cunningham. I really liked his mindset of mentioning, he wants to target that Summer League title. And I think him having that kind of mindset early is going to speak volumes for the team once the regular season comes up. And I know some people were thinking, how's he going to fit in the backcourt with Killian Hayes? And I think there's ways around that. I believe more so the fact that when there are situations to where you have both guys on the floor, you may have to divvy up who's going to be the primary ball handler. But ideally, if I would do it, if I was Coach Casey, if I was Dwayne Casey, I would say, okay, if we got both you guys on the floor, this would be a chance for Cade to work on his off-ball skills more so he can create more separation. We know he can create his own jump shot, but even he himself said he needs to get better on improving that efficiency and his jump shot accuracy. So what better way to do that would be for him to work off-ball with Killian Hayes, with his ability as a facilitator to be the primary ball handler, but also at the same time, if there's moments and situations and lineups to where Cade is going to be on the floor and Killian is not, then that's when you use Cade at his very best, when he can be the primary ball handler, bring the ball up the court, use his vision, his IQ, and his ability to just find a way to get his teammates involved, which is something similar to what you see to LeBron or a Ben Simmons or even a Luka Doncic himself. So seeing that, you can find ways to work around having both these guys on the same roster, even on the same floor at times. And of course, if it's just Killian running a unit by himself, he's going to be your point guard. No ifs, ands, or buts. So there's always ways to work around it. And with Cade mentioning of how he wants to work with Killian and everything, we're seeing an emphasis from not just him but also Pistons brass of that says Killian Hayes is still in our plans. So knowing that leads me to believe that they have no thoughts of giving away Killian or giving up on him anytime soon. But back to my point of what I mentioned about Summer League and G League, with Olynyk up here, you can now have your young guys that either you drafted this year or even last year get some time to develop and grow more down with the drive before they make their eventual call up here. I don't see Olynyk being that super long-term backup center spot. I can eventually see over time him getting less minutes, while guys like Garza and Koprivica, who are more developed by then, getting more and more as they become your focal point at the big man spot with Isaiah Stewart.
All right. Well, probably give that a mid-range B. Frank, what about you?
I'm in the same boat too. I mean, the contract, $37 million is a little bit too much, but sometimes you just got to pay people in order to get them to come to Detroit. And I like Olynyk as a player. I mean, he's that stretch five who can shoot the three, plus he can also crash the glass a little bit too. And he'll be the perfect backup to Isaiah Stewart, and plus he can also be a mentor to Luka Garza and Koprivica and help those guys in their development as well. Well, and when the time comes, it'll be time for him to move out, and those guys will move in. So I'm giving it a B.
And not to mention, he's a guy who, if willing, he can get dirty. Just ask Kevin Love and his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dirty and scrappy, not to mention. So, moving forward, they signed another guy, another free agent. Trey Lyles, a forward, to a 2-year, $5 million contract. Not sure which team he came from, but we'll start with that and then we'll go to Frank.
San Antonio Spurs.
From the Spurs.
The Spurs, one of Greg Popovich's team. So, Ed, what is your grade on Trey Lyles?
C+. I think this is more so of a depth, done for depth purposes, of establishing that you have enough bodies at your forward and wing spots. And I think Trey Lyles can be in that spot, that second tier that's right below Livers and Sadiq Bey, respectively. So, again, I like this move for depth purposes. It's a cheap deal. It's a cheap contract, 2 years, $5 million. So the fact that the Pistons have all this cap space and they're not overtly spending it, I know Olynyk was a bit much, but I think if that's what it took to get him here, and you balance that out by giving Trey Lyles just $5 million over 2 years, you work with that and you deal with that. So C+ for me, but it's a fair C+ because you need depth at some point for this team.
All right, C+, says Ed. Frank, what is your grade on Lyles?
C+ as well. He's just really a depth guy. He can shoot as well. I think he's kind of fizzled out from what he was at Kentucky about back in 2015, if I remember correctly. But again, he's just there to provide depth, cheap deal, C+.
All right, we'll give it a C+. And then the re-signings: point guard Cory Joseph to a 2-year, $10 million contract, and point guard Saban Lee to a 3-year contract. No money details on Saban Lee's 3-year contract re-signings. So those are just updates right there. And then shifting to the Red Wings, they re-signed forward Tyler Bertuzzi to a 2-year, $9.5 million contract. Yes, Tyler Bertuzzi is valuable. The Red Wings are going to need him with Alex Tanguay's new power play system.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys think about that.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that it also shows a commitment, at least for this year and beyond and next year, compared to what it was, because they traded Anthony Mantha last year, correct?
They did to the
Yes.
Capitals.
Yeah, so even though it was a little bit of a surprise for that one, it was hinted or alluded to leading up to it. So at least it shows for this one, this is one of your core pieces you still want to keep around to go with the likes of Dylan Larkin, for example. So the fact that you didn't give him at too much of a priceful contract as well, good move by Eisman, I thought, and I actually liked the kid as well. He has tremendous upside. And like you mentioned, Taylor, he can be a good help, a great help for that power play unit. So B+ for me, for sure.
All right.
For me. Same deal for me as well. Hell, B+. Didn't have to pay him a lot, and it's not a long-term deal. I think eventually he's going to demand more money down the road, but we'll let Steve Yzerman figure that out when the time comes. He's someone who's going to contribute offense and also be a bit of a scrap or two, who can provide some grit and toughness to the lineup. So I'm giving this a B+.
Yep. I'll give that a B+ too. Plus, Jacob Barana has filed for arbitration. That's what I heard over the past week. So we'll keep an eye on Jacob Barana, see what he does next. Just another update to throw out. Yeah.
Didn't Philippe Hronek file for arbitration as well?
Yeah, Philippe Hronek. Yeah. That's right. I remember that too. So, yep. So there you go. That's Red Wings. Now the Tigers. They traded pitcher Daniel Norris to the Milwaukee Brewers for prospect pitcher Reese Olson. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, what is your grade on the Norris trade?
B-, or at least a solid, an even B, because you go younger with this pick, and you get a left-handed pitcher, which can help out in key certain situations. If you're facing a big left-handed bat in a pressure situation, you can bring him in out of the bullpen to take care of that guy, for example. And I like the fact that they are going younger. You know, you want to go younger if you in terms of developing pitchers and developing your arms and having your rotation stockpiled, whether it be in the starters or in the bullpens, especially amongst your relievers. So I don't mind it. I give it an even B for me.
All right. Mid-range B, says Ed. Frank, what is your grade on the Norris trade?
Give this a B as well. You get a left-handed pitcher to add your rotation down the road. I believe he was in high A ball, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's where he ended up going. He might be getting bumped up to Double A soon if he hasn't already. So we'll see what he does. And I don't know if he'll be called up in September or not, but I'm giving this a B.
All right. Mid-range B, the consensus grade on Norris and Olson. Plus, the Tigers have claimed right-handed pitcher Nivaldo Rodriguez off waivers from the Houston Astros and optioned him to AAA, the Toledo Mudhens. He had a 2.45 ERA in 7 1/3 innings pitched with the Houston Astros earlier this season. We'll go ahead and grade that one as well. Ed, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Frank. What is your grade on Nivaldo Rodriguez being claimed off waivers?
B or B-. You still got to see what develops, because I'm sure there was a little bit of a downgrade for him in terms of his performance, for him to be DFA'd by Houston like that. But I'm sure AJ Hinch wouldn't have minded, didn't mind swooping him up, and I think that could be a sign of things to come, or at least for this upcoming offseason, if, and that's only a big if, Chris Elledge is willing to spend at least some kind of money to bring in more better players for AJ Hinch to work around with. And I think there's a good shot and a good chance you could easily say, hey, you can look at coach, at AJ Hinch and say, hey, you got connections? You could say, you're damn right I do. Let's go grab a couple of my old buddies from Houston. That's a scenario I wouldn't mind seeing playing out. And it all depends on whether or not Chris Elledge is willing to spend the money. But other than that, yeah, I don't mind that at all. I don't mind this move at all.
All right. Frank, what is your grade on Nivaldo Rodriguez?
I'm going to kind of go C+ to B- because the sample size really isn't there. 2.45 ERA in 7 1/3 innings. It looks
Very
good,
small.
but there's only 7 1/3 innings, and plus there's a reason he had to be DFA'd. But AJ Hinch being from Houston, kind of figured, you know what? Hey, this is a guy I knew about. let's bring him up here. Won't cost us anything. And as to what Ed alluded to as for Chris Ilitch spending money and hopefully getting a couple of his old buddies from Houston, that's something I'm just going to say, I'll believe it when I see it, because we all know how Chris Ilitch has rolled in the past and likes to continue to roll.
Yeah, but I ran into an article, but I ran into a Score article about Chris Ilitch looking ahead to the off season and next season. He's saying we're going to try to be a contender again. We're going to try to build it first. Not sure where he's coming. I wasn't sure where he's coming with that at first. I thought it was going to just get his hopes up. But after looking at it, it seems that he and General Manager Alaviela were looking to sign bigger players. And that was from Chris McCoskey from the Detroit News. Officer Barb Brady.
Oh.
Jeff Moss at the Detroit Sports Rag always calls him, which is understandable because we all know Chris McCoskey being the reckless Tigers cheerleader as a beat writer for the Detroit News, of course.
Well, one thing I did want to say, hey, with Chris Ilitch saying, hey, we want to spend money in the offseason, it's going to go back to what I said that Al Avila alluded to, said the rebuild's over. We're building now. And that tells me, okay, then you better be ready to pony up in the offseason and be contending for a wild card spot. Now, the ponying up in the offseason, a lot of that's going to fall on Chris Ilitch. So, Chris, you want to talk the talk, you better be able to walk the walk, buddy.
I mean, it wouldn't hurt if, say, a guy that used to be here before and say, hey, I like where things are going, and I missed Detroit. I already got my World Series ring. I missed Detroit, and I got good working experience with AJ Hinch. I wouldn't mind coming back here. Hint, hint, Justin. But again, if you saw a deal like that, that could help, get the ball rolling on other players. Like, hey, maybe this guy wants to come here. Maybe this guy want to come here. It doesn't have to be a full Houston reunion, but let's say a couple of guys, Justin Verlander, Carlos Correa, but like something to that effect. If that's something that could happen, I could see that being a realistic enough option. But again, that's only if Chris wants to spend. That's only if. That's the biggest if possible. This is the same guy that helps facilitate the Doug Fister trade, where we got peanuts and a hot dog in return, and we did that to cut costs, and that led to the disaster known as Joe Nathan experience. So again, you never know when it comes to cheapskate Chris.
Yeah, Chris Ilitch took over for Mike Ilitch, who was like terminally ill for like the last 3 years as primary owner of the Detroit Tigers and Red Wings as well. Yeah, so Chris Ilitch not only has to prove everything that he's a better owner than we think, he and General Manager Alaviela have to hit it where it hurts. Try to address the shortstop and second baseman. Try to address the defense. Also try to address the starting pitching and the bullpen as well. Try to address the entire defense. Not to mention some more of the hitting. Nico Goodrum should be my first to GTFO. So
definitely
Goodrum
agree with
doesn't hit,
definitely,
and he commits too many errors. Harold Castro has committed 10 errors, which is baffling. That explains how horrible the Tigers' defense has been thus far this season, and that's why I think they are not a contending team this, despite Miguel Cabrera's chase to 500 career home runs, which we'll get to next. And congrats to Miguel Cabrera ahead of time. I'm almost sure it'll happen this year. He's only 2 home runs away from that milestone mark. And I know it's huge. Every Tiger fan knows it. Every Tiger fan that follows this is aware of that and such. But still, it's different than the team either contending or just pretending. Which is more important to the fans? Which is more important to us? Just Miguel Cabrera being an individual player, chasing his own history with his personal achievements? Or do we care more about a team at least try to get a World Series ring.
I'll just come out and say it. I want this team to build towards getting a World Series ring.
Mhm.
That should be the first and foremost concern going forward. And look, Miguel Cabrera getting his 500th home run and eventually 3,000th career hit. That's all well and good. If that happens, we'll let him have his moment and say, "Hey, congrats. We salute you, man." But as soon as that's said and done with, it's back to focusing on the task at hand. We can't let it overshadow what's most important. You let the little things have their moment, but after that's all over with, it's back to the big fish.
I can agree. I can agree with that to an extent. I can't necessarily blame the multitude of people that wants to put emphasis in terms of discussing or talking about this potential inevitable moment, it seems, of at least Cabrera hitting 500 home runs, because given upon the fact that they went through years after year and after year and after year of coming up short and not winning that World Series, it's that point of this era of Tigers baseball. Like, okay, we didn't get this. Can this be at least some sort of moral victory, if you want to call it that, to at least acknowledge and celebrate? And I got no problem with at the very least, getting a chance to stand, observe, and recognize this, because let's face it, guys, considering the fact that milestones like this took a bit of a hit in terms of credibility when in regards to the steroid era, and what was the fact that we were talking about in terms of Cabrera, one of the best pure hitters of the baseball you ever saw, that was emphasized for a certain reason. So the fact that even though he has been obviously on the downside of his career the past several seasons, the fact that he's this close to such a milestone, in fact, a dual pair of milestones that years ago would not be, I wouldn't say dismissed or shooed away or snooted at, but yeah, someone's that similar to synonym to that effect. That wouldn't probably be as highly praised, but again, I definitely do agree with you guys by saying that, yeah, there's obviously bigger fish to fry, but I don't mind for at least a couple of seconds to say, hey, listen, you've had a upstanding career with here, even though you started in Miami. You came here, you had your peak, your zenith, your absolute best years of your prime here with us. We got to watch it happen in front of us. And, this is at least something for those fans that got to say, no, we didn't get that World Series, and that really sucked that we didn't. So I want at least to have this moral victory of saying, hey, I saw Miggy hit his 500, or I saw Miggy get his 3,000 hit. They want at least a little something to say, hey, there's a little bit of a payoff of through all these years of suffering. But I do agree with you guys that you don't want to put too much emphasis on that, because it takes away from what the true goal is. That, listen, this is a rebuild, a restore, a restoration project still going on. And yeah, while it's nice to have little footnotes and acknowledgments of this, there still must have be a one goal and end game that stands above all else, and that should not take a backseat to anything. So definitely get what you guys are coming from that standpoint.
Fair enough.
All right. Yeah, that's true. So that explains it all. By the way, Jonathan Scope just hit a bomb toward between left field and left center field, putting the Tigers on the board. A solo shot. Red Sox, Boston lead the Tigers 4-1 in the seventh inning. Speaking of
the trade deadline, I'm not too surprised, but at least a little bit surprised that they kept Scope. I would have thought that there's a chance that he could have been one of those guys on the move last week for the deadline.
Well, yeah. I think that's possibly an indication that they might look to re-sign him in the offseason.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, you love what he's done this year, and you hope to see him continue more. But yeah, it's definitely a wait and see approach. But hey, it may say something of what they believe in him that we don't know of.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of individual players, Eric Haase, their catcher and outfielder / DH, being tonight, named the American League Player of the Month in July. I like Eric Haase. He has been one of the lightning rods of this team, in addition to Akil Baddoo.
Mm-hmm. He's one of those guys, like you mentioned with him, with Baddoo as well. You could see as potential building block for the future of this team. So the fact that he's getting, Rookie of the Month awards already, It shows the potential he has, and I think the pairing of him and Jake Rogers could be a more than sustainable tandem duo at the catcher spot. So you need that in terms of the fact it's been years since we had a combo like that going back to Alex Avila and James McCann. So it's good to see something like that at the back spot once more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Frank.
Yeah, that's pretty nice to see Eric Haase win Rookie of the Month win. I think all the attention's been on Akil Baddoo as being the team's best rookie, and Haase is saying, hold on a second, guys. I'm here too, and I can win the awards too. So I think, like Ed said, he's a key building block for the future down the road, and him and Jake Rogers, very good tandem at catcher, kind of like Avila and McCann were. But we'll see if he can continue to keep getting better and better and bring in some bigger hardware down the road.
They're even individually better than Grayson Griner, who still can't
Let
hit.
the church say amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
And say amen again.
Yeah, GTFO Grayson Griner. Sorry, but you're just not good enough. You need to go back to the minors for the rest of your life. So that's Tigers, and that's everything that we've covered now to the What We've Learned segment. What I've learned, of course, like we just recently discussed, I'm almost sure that Miguel Cabrera will reach 500 career home runs this year. After that happens, the Tigers will at least hopefully focus more on the team instead of just an individual player. So we'll start with Ed. We'll go to Ed next, and then we'll go to Frank. Ed, what have we learned in terms of what we discussed tonight?
What I've learned, at least in terms of what we talked about tonight, that the Pistons, they're not settling down. They're not stopping to smell the roses or any of that, so to speak. Yes, they had a solid draft. Yes, I like some of their additions in the offseason, but he still got put in the work. Case in point, exemplified by the fact that Cade Cunningham himself, just like minutes after his introductory press conference ended, he got the suit off, he got on the sweats, he was already and immediately putting in the work on the floor. That's what you want to see in a number one pick. That's what's going to endear you to a city. That's what's going to make the fans fall in love with you, and that's going to send a message to not just to the front office that picked you, but your future team is that, hey, I'm here to build, and I'm here to win. Let's all get on this together. So that's definitely what I learned from this week, and it all starts with the man himself, Mr. Cade Cunningham.
Yep. So as Miguel Cabrera steps up to the plate against Adam Ottavino, Frank, what did you learn in terms of what we discussed? Frank, I think your mic is...
My bad. Sorry. What I've learned is that the Pistons aren't resting on their laurels after drafting Cade Cunningham. Even Cade himself says, you know what? I'm drafted number one. Let's get to work. And he did just that by putting the shorts on and the shirt and going to shoot around the gym. But also they're committing to getting better at free agency as well. As I mentioned, Kelly Olynyk, Cory Joseph, Trey Lyles. I'll ask both of you guys, what do all three have in common?
Ed? Yep. What do they have in common?
Oh, I'm gonna let Frank answer that one since he does know the answer.
All three are of Canadian descent. So just a fun little fact to throw out there. So.
And Coach Casey would know a thing or two about Canada.
Yes, as
he was with the Toronto Raptors.
So year two of the Troy Weaver era is off to a great start, and I think it's just going to keep getting better from here.
Yeah, and we're going to keep our eyes on that and many more as our Detroit teams try to improve. Even the Lions will try to discuss that as they prepare their preseason week 1 next week. That's on a Friday, August 13th. So that is another fine episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast on Stables Media. Before we go, this show is sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Download it from the Apple App Store or Google Play and sign up by using the referral code STABLES for Stables Media. Capital S, rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B as in billionaire. That's the Viget Sports mobile app, available in the Apple App Store and Google Play. Download it, sign up by using the referral code STABLES for Stables Media with a capital S. Gentlemen, excellent job as always. We'll be back next week. For Ed Smith and Frank Vashner, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Follow me on Twitter at DT2Phillips and on Instagram at DT2Phillips with 2 L's, of course. Follow Ed Smith on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313. And follow Frank Vashner on Twitter and Instagram at Frank_Vashner. Follow our show on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like it on Facebook, the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Thanks very much for listening, watching, downloading, and sharing. And remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power to the people. Hit them with a high, and we rest our case. Stay out of trouble.